Hello, Fernando. How's things? Give it just another couple of minutes and then we'll crack on whenever we've given everyone a chance to get in. Hello, Jeff. How are you? Right, so that's 4 minutes past, so we'll crack on. As usual, mainly just focusing on the 4 hour and the M15. Getting M15 risk entries, quite aggressive. Important that you know sort of the right areas in which to use them. Generally, the early phases of the pullback as a continuation, as in the first two, usually are the highest probability areas. And generally, you're thinking full alignment. You want structure aligned, you want order flow aligned. You don't really want to be fighting against anything in that regard, unless it's a super high probability overall area. So let's take a quick look at the 4 hour. Is just continuing on from last week. So the 4 hour, obviously bearish. So we had this bearish leg, and then we had an IBOS there, which turned out to be sweep liquidity, and then a bullish IBOS there. So 4 hour internal bullish, very likely at this point we're going to come up to at least the EQ of the leg. So based on the 4 hour, massively favour buys on the M15. Obviously, the first sort of ideal POI where we can anticipate sort of the continuation of the bearish 4 hour trend is this one here. You can see it's bang at the EQ, has the bit of inducement in front of it as well. Didn't sweep liquidity, but it mitigated this demand as well, the wicks, which caused the break structure. So very high probability area. And then obviously if that fails, you can start looking higher up here. And obviously you're aware of the 4 hour, we're aware of the overall intentions, but we're letting the M15 guide our decision making. So, you know, we're not just jumping straight down to the M1 looking for an M1 entry within this supply. We're waiting for sort of the M15 to sort of shift in our direction. So at the end of the last session, we took this here for a nice win. So we'll just delete this. So now we have a fresh range. So if we just map supply and demand in it, that was mitigated. That was mitigated. So obviously of here, which is nice. It's at the extreme of this range, which is our most recent internal range. Obviously of here as well, which could play out, but yeah, it's the demand obviously which caused the break structure and the internal break structure, as it's where the demand came into the market to cause price to close above the highs. So yeah, it could take a chance there. As I say, the order flow is bullish, so could just easily pull back into this and continue higher. Obviously, you're buying in the premium of the range, which isn't ideal, but then, you know, no sign of a pullback running yet, like with no bearish IBOS, even bearish M15 shock, so we can't take a chance here. Funny pip stop. And then 5 hour. Yeah, and then that takes us up to This high probability, well, reasonably high probability supply here. We're expecting it obviously caused the IBOS on the 4 hour, but obviously it didn't sweep liquidity. And we're sort of expecting it to be used as inducement for the POI behind. So yeah, place the order there. Let's see what happens. Yeah, at this point, as I say, with risk entry, you want full alignment. So the absolute ideal is to have sort of the impulse out and then sort of the corrective pull back in and then continue. That's what you want to trade here. Once sort of closed above there, then you could argue, we had to sort of break pretty minor structure come back, which again, it's only minor structure. And I would definitely still be looking for a confirmation entry from that zone, but just whenever it comes to risk entries, you want sort of everything to be aligned. So now, say we have this IBOS. This feels just the way it was formed. It feels quite corrective push up. So I would be expecting this low to go. So I wouldn't really be leaving an order within that range. It's like these are sort of the ranges that you want to be trading from. See, like here, where you sort of had the pullback, a strong impulse out, and then a pullback in and continuation. That's sort of what you want to be trading. The way this here sort of price just trickled up, like on the lower time frames, that's going to be a ton of trend line liquidity behind there. So I'll be expecting that to get swept. So we'll reevaluate, we'll play it on and then reevaluate things depending on how it sets up. So now we've come into the 4 hour supply. So possible we could see this could be the catalyst for the M15 swing pullback. So obviously at this point, you're looking for signs of bearish intent on the M15. So let's see what happens. Keep pushing up. So you have this it's obviously during spread hours, so it's very small demand. It's not even really worth marking on, to be honest. But yeah, we'll see what happens next. So now, obviously this can just be a pullback into this range. You can see, could just see this here and then a continuation higher. Could potentially look for sells sort of based on the 4 hour supply and sort of thinking that this could be the start of the pullback to here. But all we've really had is a bearish M15 shock. Then you could count this as a II boss if you want, which again is slightly more significant because this is just all the M15 IA bosses. Yes, didn't break that significant structure, but it is just a sign that price is starting to internally make lower lows and lower highs. So you can sort of quite aggressively look for sell in here. Yeah, and the order flow is bearish because you can see we had the bearish M15 shock and then we pull back into the supply and the supply held. So we can say the supply is starting to take control here, that we do have sort of bearish order flow. So for that reason, trading, whenever trading's at its absolute simplest, I find that it's generally when you're trading in line with the order flow and you're not trying to sort of think too many steps ahead. You're just literally looking like, right, we've had sort of this push down, have this supply. It makes sense from the 4 hour supply. We can see a deeper pullback in the M15. We had the M15 swing break structure. So we're expecting the pullback to the EQ. So yeah, just follow the bearish order flow. It makes sense. Yeah, and in the live market, I probably would have trailed the break even here. Just whenever price spike that low again, you can look at, waiting for candle closure or whatever, but sort of understand that it was slightly more aggressive, could have trailed the break even there. But yeah, let's just let it play out. And that resulted in a loss. But again, quite easy in the live market, probably would have been a break even. With these videos, I just sort of keep it simple and just let them play out. So yeah, that's fine. Obviously, in hindsight, telltale sign the price probably going to push higher was the M15 liquidation there, the sweep whenever we feel it close below that low. But yeah, as I said, we could have just been a pullback into this demand range. So no surprise that we did mitigate that and continue higher. But then we knew overall how it was formed, there was a decent probability that it was going to fail, and we obviously had the discount of the leg to target. So yeah, happy enough with that. I can view this as a swing pullback if we get the close above. So far it's a sweep. Let's play it on and see what happens. Still no close above. Now we're getting the pullback. So obviously that's your M15 PBL. So that could just hold. Again, were I looking for an M15 if I were looking for a confirmation entry in the M5, the M1, I would consider an entry from this PBL. Yes, it's not ideal. The price swept the high and failed to close above, but at the same time, this isn't a confirmed sweep liquidity until this demand fails. So could just, yeah, I'm feeling aggressive today. So let's put this here. It's extremely in the range. Obviously, no close above. This is a lot more aggressive, but again, if it was like in the live market, I would consider a confirmation entry from here. I wouldn't be taking a risk entry, but sort of it is still valid to do so. Change that. Right, and it got smashed pretty badly there, and they messed up the bar replay because it was in the 4 hour. But anyway, right. So obviously that was way more aggressive following sweep liquidity. Again, with sweeps on both sides of the market, so could have went either way. Obviously it did end up going down. We can count this as our M15 IBOS, and again, this range has now failed. But for me, the most relevant sort of recent range is this one here. As you can see, it's swept liquidity, and then that's sort of the most recent impulse down. Mitigated this on here where we had the order placed earlier. So you can see it did cause a decent reaction whenever price pulled back into it. So M15 intern is bearish. So obviously, ideally, you want to get involved in a sell. On the M15 or the 4 hour, you can see it was swept. This high. Obviously, the problem now is that we've pulled back into this 4 hour internal range. So it's very possible that the M15 pullback is complete. So for that reason, wouldn't really consider a risk entry from here. Just because we've mitigated the 4 hour demand, we've mitigated the M15 demand, and we've mitigated the discount of the M15 range. The question here, David, could you elaborate more on your relevant range after an IBOS and why you don't take the whole range? Because the IBOS was there. So if you're being strict, you could say that that is the supply range. But for me, what I'm most interested in is just the most recent range, which is that there, as that is the range where the supply came into the market that caused the IBOS. Yeah, and you can keep it completely mechanical if you want. That's just the way I do it, because it doesn't really make sense to me to have ranges drawn from price to the left. So yeah, not really considering a risk entry at this point. Yeah, we'll just play it on and let's see what happens. Am I gonna have to go into a new right? I'm gonna have to start a new. Sorry, but this has never happened to me before. I'm still not a FX replay wizard. Bear with me 1 second. I'll start a new backtest. What is that? 30th of September. Sorry about that. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. That's never happened before. So here we are, back to where we were. So yeah, could have a mitigated 4-hour demand, could look for buys. So he swept this low, the inside bar there. So could say shock there or there. Just not the most convincing, still sort of confined in the range. So not really interested in buys yet. And now we've sort of broken out of this range. So you could potentially look for a buy from here. Take that there. That's not technically the chalk, but that is the high that I am most interested in seeing go. So that is the one I'm going to take. So yeah, can get aggressive here. Based on coming off the 4-hour demand, it makes sense to potentially look for buys. And yeah, weren't tagged. This is one of those positions where ideally you want to get tagged in sort of straight away because, you know, internal is technically bearish. So we could still mitigate something within this range and continue lower. So now that we sort of mitigated the EQ of this range, I wouldn't really consider that buy anymore. It's sort of where you just want to see sort of following the chalk price pull straight back in, and then you sort of get to break even here. And then just sort of, if it plays out, it plays out, but at worst, you're going to take a break even. See, in this case, came back and tapped the distal of this candle, but still hasn't followed through and taken out that high. So yeah, this is sort of ranging through Asia now. Yeah, let's just wait for more development and see what happens. So eventually we did push higher. I said, just on account of it being against the 4-hour demand, wasn't interested in a sell from here. So you can take a confirmation entry if you want. Just wait for the order flow to sort of shift bearish. Because again, this is where I say about order flow, or again, you can call it small internal, whatever you want. Yes, internal is bearish. I've had this sort of pull back in here, so we could continue lower. But you can see sort of internally prices making sort of higher highs, higher lows. So, ideally when the risk entries work at their best, you've got sort of the tight ranges where we sort of pull back in. And it's like everything sort of, it's just clear bearish order flow. Whereas in this case, the order flow is bullish coming back in. So safest bet is to wait for things to change, particularly. And again, if you're not sure, you don't have to force on them. All right, so now we have pretty interesting price action. This is the PBL. Which caused that liquidation. So obviously now had price lows below there. Again, if you're taking the more significant low, take here. In any case, yes, price, I know it's a bearish IBOS, but in this case, then I'm happy to sort of focus on this here as being just the most recent range. Just again, personal preference. Obviously have this at the extreme. Mitigated this here. So yeah, I can take an order here. That feels quite small, so can't just take the larger range if you want. Again, you can always just take the extreme, but sometimes when it feels quite small relative to the price action, the recent price action, you can be refining things too much. So personally, I'd rather sacrifice the precision of the entry just to increase my odds of getting tagged. That is just sort of how I want to do things. Yeah. So yeah, at this point, it's pretty clear this low is going to get run because it didn't break any structure. It was just a pullback into this extreme. It's very likely now it's going to follow through. So yeah, let's see what happens. Other loss. Yeah, a lot overall is happy enough with the PBL flip, swap liquidity. Yeah, this low was likely weak as it hadn't broken any structure. We'd had the bearish IA boss. Yeah, it made sense. So now if you just look at where we are on the 4 hour, it's always good to have a reminder. At this point, it does look like this demand is going to hold because you can see we had sort of the battle between, we had a bit of a shock there. Pull back into the supply tried to push it down, failed. So at this point, it looks like prices are going to continue higher. And yeah, ideally want to look for buys at this point in the M15. So M15 is still bullish overall. That has our M15 IBOS. So swinging and turn is bullish. Obviously want to get involved in the longs if we can. So in terms of in the range, obviously the safest bet is down here. You can see the range is completely unmitigated as well. So it's a pretty good place to enter. You could just be aggressive and look to follow the bullish order flow. Again, were I trading looking for an M5 confirmation entry, I would definitely be all over that. But just on account of it. Not having swap liquidity, no inducement. It's just not really somewhere I would leave a risk entry. Yeah, and could play out is sort of when you have the clear order flow and price can just continue, but have this sort of clear unmitigated extreme. Yeah, just not from sort of doing these back tests, not a massive fan whenever price starts ranging like this. Again, you want sort of the clear order flow. You just want to see price respecting supply or demand. And when it's sort of ranging around like that, I'm not really interested in anymore. Still valid, but yeah, it's just sort of anecdotally what I've noticed from doing these. So swap the high here, no close above yet. This is PBL, so backward hold. That fails, then you could potentially start looking for the sells. Yeah, you can see it eventually did hold. So got another IBOS. Don't think it's another swing break yet. 537. Yeah, we have had the break structure. So if a new swing range to work with as well. Obviously within the range. It's our swing low. Where do you think most losses come from M15 risk entry? Are there any trade plan rules you'd avoid? Yeah, be very, very, very stringent with the M15 frameworks and 4-hour frameworks and where you use them. That is the absolute key. Again, but I only use them in very select spots where everyone's lined up. Again, here I just sort of follow the order flow. I do what makes sense to me, but yeah, I only use them sort of in the super high probability areas where everything's lined up. That's really the main things to watch out for. If you're taking them like within this range, you're going to get smashed more often than not. You really want to stick to the high probability spots. So obviously within this range, few potential entry POIs. We've mitigated our high probability for our supply now, which again makes it a lot more aggressive to be looking for buys in M15. How aggressive? It's up to you. Personally, I'd be sort of looked as like if you look at the 4-hour, this is high probability 4-hour POI, swap liquidity or swap lid coming into it. It's very likely we're going to see something change in the M15 here. So for that reason, I'm not really that keen on looking for a risk entry. Obviously, you could, if you just want to follow the M15 until it changes, you can enter there. Again, if I had a nice impulse out of the range, we could just pull back in here and continue higher. Yeah, let's just see what plays out. Yeah, nice impulse to the upside there. Again, we mitigated the EQ of the 4-hour range now as well here. So definitely looking for signs of bearish intent in the M15. Had this little flip here. And you could be aggressive and follow the bearish order flow in anticipation of price pulling back to mitigate something in this range. But again, not really somewhere I would leave a risk entry. But valid to do so. Like it's logical to do so because you can see I've had a bearish M15 shock. Demand has flipped to supply. And it's logical that we're going to see the pullback following the break structure, and we've mitigated high probability supply. But sort of if I was taking a risk entry, I'd sort of prefer to see like sort of slightly more significant ranges rather than the sort of tight little price action like that there. Yeah, and there you are. You can see we just tapped the top of this range, which is sort of the swing range, and then blasted straight through it, which is why it's not a good idea to take risk entries, no spots. Again, now we could get a strong liquidation. If we take this high again, that could be the catalyst for the deeper pullback. And we blasted straight through. So that 4-hour supply barely caused a reaction, which is a pretty big surprise, as it was a pretty high probability zone at DQ. So that sort of tells you how clear the bullish momentum is at the minute. So now in terms of the next clear 4-hour supply, we obviously have this one here. It's not the best POI. See the way price just sort of ranged around and then dropped. There's no sweep liquidity. It'll probably be used as inducement for above. Mark that on. Yeah, so the next POI may see a bit of reaction here, but most likely we see a more significant reaction from here. So this is failed. So this supply here is failed. So we can't look for buys. Just keep following the bullish order flow. So call that an M15 IBOS. Call that an IBOS as well. So you can just follow the bullish order flow. See the clear momentum in the 4-hour. Yeah, not the this isn't the highest probability area to be used in a risk entry in the world. It's had an M15 break structure. We know we can expect a pullback. You're in the premium of the M15 range, but again, it's just following the order flow. So it can make sense, particularly we know there's a lot of momentum in the 4-hour, price barely reacting to the demand or to the 4-hour supply. But then obviously ideal scenario is to get a bearish IBOS and then look to sort of play the M15 pullback as we are on the premium of the leg. This is whenever I say sort of full alignment as well, it's like you can see here we had the impulsive move out of that range. So then you're just looking for the corrective pullback into it. And the next bullish leg, that's sort of where, that's sort of the obvious move to make. So for that reason, I'm happy enough to take the chance on it. Quite pull back. Again, you can see the clear momentum at this point. Have to break this minor low to come back in, which you could argue is fractal structure relative to the internal. So the fractal may just switch bearish to mitigate that. But as I say, I sort of want to see full alignment. Have this little range here. And things is high probability that failing just because this range is completely unmitigated. Price hasn't even tapped into it yet. So I would say if I were to leave an order anywhere here, it would be within this range. And then we have mitigated 4-hour supply now as well, which is a noteworthy consideration, as that will probably be a catalyst for a deeper pullback in the M15. So yeah, just happy enough to let this play out at the moment and then see what way it sort of goes. You know, if we get signs of bearish intent from the 4-hour supply, then we can look for sells. So pushed up further into the, yeah, and this is the lower probability 4-hour supply is identified. We're probably ultimately expecting it to get users inducement for the one above, but yeah, you can see huge amount of bullish momentum at this point. To look for a sell here, you'd want to see sort of a pretty clear liquidation. You'd want to see like price sort of range around for a good few hours and then sort of sweep that and then pull back in. You'd want to see something like that. The way this here, like price barely pulling back. Yeah, would want to see sort of a pretty clear liquidation before considering a sell at this point. So have had a liquidation. Have we? Haven't. No, all those candles and there's no fake chalk there. So no strong liquidation yet. Can do is view that as an IBOS. So to get the close below here, then look for sell. In this case, that POI there is looking pretty appealing. That's the way it has the inducement in front of it. Swap liquidity as well. Flip this. Come on to the left. Yeah. Sort of given where we are, as the 4-hour demand field or supply field, I993. Yeah, so this 4-hour supply has failed. So swept the lid. Could be a decent catalyst for a pullback. So is more aggressive again because price hasn't closed below the low yet. But yeah, I thought it makes sense to look for a sell given the overall area, how overextended the M15 is. And yeah, in this POI, swap liquidity is flip, has inducement. It makes sense. They're going to see a decent reaction from it. And it was a pretty decent reaction. Nice loss. Yeah, I think it was worth the risk given the overall area. It had already swept liquidity, but obviously no close below wasn't ideal. Now we've had the close below. Now this very clear POI here. So the internal has switched bearish. Now this is sort of your high probability framework. M15 internal switch bearish, following sweep of the 4-hour lid. We're expecting the 4-hour pullback. Or the M15 pullback, even just the EQ. Order. And now again, you have to break sort of pretty decent structure to come back. You sort of want to see the IBOS and then just sort of pull straight back in, and that's sort of bearish order flow. So cancel that order. No 4-hour chalk run yet to signal that the 4-hour pullback is beginning, but obviously M15 internal has shifted. So it makes sense to follow the sort of bearish order flow. Premium versus discount. So obviously we're expecting the pullback to continue to at least the discount. Obviously, of the 4-hour supply or 4-hour demand, sorry. This supply here. Demand, sorry, I keep getting those two mixed up. So price impulse out of this range, and we haven't even mitigated the range yet. So I would say it's very likely this high is going to be swept and the price will come back up to mitigate something in here for potentially continuing lower. That is how I would personally be looking at things. And let's see what happens. See, we've got sort of bearish order flow now. Pullback mitigated this range, didn't quite mitigate the pivot at the extreme on a. See, again, looks like this supply is going to be respected. So yeah, supply is in control currently. These ranges, they didn't sweep liquidity. We've the mitigated range above. It's just not really ideal. They feel quite insignificant ranges anyway. You can see they're only sort of minor pullbacks, so it wouldn't be any surprise to see those sort of get swept and used as inducement or something. But yeah, let's see what happens next. So now obviously we've mitigated this demand here. Wouldn't consider leaving a risk entry here, even though it's pro M15 trend, just because internal's bearish. You know, when you think risk entry, you think full alignment, and yeah. See, we got a bit of reaction to that demand, but they just pull back into this range and then continue lower. So supply is still clearly in control. Yeah, and we have this supply here. You can just follow the mitigations, but didn't sweep liquidity. You know, it could easily be swept to sort of mitigate something in that wick. So wouldn't really leave a risk entry there, to be honest. And yeah, we just keep selling off. So now we've come into the 4-hour supply. 4-hour demand. Sorry, I'm going to punch myself in the face the next time I mix them two up. Come into the 4-hour demand, so could easily continue higher from here. But overall, we know the M15 or the 4-hour is bearish, and we've mitigated the premium. So, yeah, pullback could be complete, but again, no bearish 4-hour chalk. Never mind an IBOS to sort of signal that the pullback is complete. So these POIs here within the M15 range. Again, not looking to trade these in isolation because they're kind of M15 internal currently, kind of order flow, a lot of bearish momentum, but sort of just, it's good to be aware of them for areas that, you know, we may see price shift bullish to sort of facilitate the next bullish M15 leg. So still just selling off, a lot of momentum. And we have these POIs here, but they're pretty nothing POIs. They're just wicks essentially, they're just pauses. Yeah, not really risk entry territory. Now we've come up and mitigated this. That's pretty noteworthy because you can see we broke out of the little range and a wick never even tap back into it. So it's possible there's just a pullback to mitigate this. You know, if you look at above, all the ranges are mitigated. So we could just mitigate this and then continue lower. So you can see it does feel like it's an impulsive move down and then sort of a corrective pullback in this play. So yeah, it could continue lower from here, but not really interested in a risk entry. Right now, mitigate the 4-hour supply or 4-hour demand. It's me punching myself in the face, getting that wrong again. Yeah, you can see here now we do have signs of bullish intent. You can see ranges starting to be respected. then we have this nice range here. So this point, these are all pretty minor ranges. And then now we have, you can see these being respected. Just draw these on. Yeah, so could look for an entry here. No real obvious engulf candle within it. Not ideal, but we'll just take the extreme. Again, this is where when price sort of starts to range around, I'm not a massive fan of leaving the order on. You want sort of the order to be filled pretty quickly. So yeah, let's just see. I haven't mitigated anything to the left really of note. That was already mitigated. Sort of had a series of mitigations there. This range has been mitigated. This is unmitigated, so it is possible we could sort of pull back the whole way up here and then sort of continue lower. But yeah, that would be sort of the one area that I would be reluctant to sort of buy against. So coming lower. Yeah, so they're pretty much just mitigated demand, which is already mitigated. You could say, or supply that was already mitigated. Swept that lid. So that was obviously the catalyst for next bearish leg. We have pretty significant eyeballs to work with. So in 4 hour, we've had a failed reaction to the 4 hour demand. You can see we mitigated, tried to push up, and it looks like we're going with failed reaction. Again, 4 hour demand had no lid, which means this could turn out to be a strong liquidation where sort of we take this low and then price does continue in the direction. I think there was an example of that on EU a couple of weeks ago. That's obviously the supply which caused the IBOS. Could look for an entry there, just sort of if you follow the mitigations. You can see everything above is pretty much mitigated. See if that POI. But if you take the range was mitigated. So, you know, quite often AU just follows the mitigations. Obviously, relatively equal highs here, which isn't ideal. But yeah, where I take a chance on an entry here, I would just basically follow the mitigations. Take this here. And no tag. Yeah, and you can see we just mitigated the wick in that case, which again was the wick which caused the IBOS. So no surprise the price pulled back into that, but did have the range above completely unmitigated. So I think where we were trying to enter there was logical relative to everything. So now the 4-hour demand has failed. We're still contained within the range. You can see the range is formed quite poorly. You can see there's pretty equal lows there. I would say it's very likely that's going to get smashed at this point. M15 swing still bullish. Yeah, so again, may see a decent reaction for one of these POIs, but yeah, let's just play it on. Right, that's 5-4. So we'll call it there and open it up to any questions. How much more aggressive are M15 risk entries rather than having lower time frame confirmation entry? A lot more aggressive in all but probably the highest probability of setups. Where whenever I take an M15 risk entry, it's when everything's pretty much aligned. It's whenever 4-hour and M15 is aligned, M15 swinging and turns aligned. And it's pretty much, it's hard for me to give it an exact mechanical sort of framework of when I'll take one, but I know myself that when everyone's aligned and I just want to get involved, I don't want to, I can see the POI, I can see everyone's lined up and I don't want to risk getting a no tag in the confirmation entry. I just want to get involved and I'm happy to take the loss because the high probability framework, I'm happy to take the loss. But as I say, that's literally pretty much either the first leg of the continuation of the M15 trend or the first leg of the pullback of the M15. They're pretty much the only two areas where I use them now. Obviously here I just sort of go with the flow, follow the M15 order flow, but probably should be a lot more strict with sort of really understanding where price is relative to the daily 4-hour, etc. But it's probably something I'll start looking at doing going forward, just sort of try and help make things as mechanical as possible. Does anyone else have any other questions or? No other questions, guys, about psychology or anything? No? Well then, we'll call it a day there then, guys. Yeah, another pretty bleak day for the M15 risk entries. Things just never really lined up that cleanly. But yeah, hopefully it's took some value from sort of hearing the overall thought process and how I was viewing things anyway. Yeah. Thanks very much for your time, guys. If you have any questions or anything about it, just hit me up in the questions channel in the Discord. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.